Greetings, one and all. Thanks for tuning in and looking at my little videos. I had some great responses to the last one. It was really good to chat to people on email or in the comments or whatever. And then somebody asked the old question that we all ask: why is there no justice in this world? Why do bad things happen? Happens to us all. Even when you're working on yourselves, the shit still comes. But that's because we're still working on ourselves. And we get caught up in the laws of accident. We're trying to get also caught up in the laws of fate, but that can only be done if we're doing the right thing, which you can learn all about through my other videos. And it reminded me of a chapter in Beelzebub's Tales in All and Everything, Gurdjieff's All and Everything, where Beelzebub's telling Hussein about our planet and how we keep going to war. We're always fighting each other, and there seems to be no way that we're developing. We seem to be very, undeveloped human beings still. And Hussein's just despaired at us all because he likes us. He thinks we're nice beings. And surely we have promise of developing, which we have. We just got to do it. But not enough people are. And he discusses how, in the Opinion of War chapter, I'm going to start reading from that. Beelzebub became silent and began to look expectantly at his grandson, who, as if talking to himself very sadly in a tone full of despair, said, "How will it all end? Is there really no way out at all?" We all felt that at times. And we all felt that, is this ever going to end? Is there a way out of all this? And I wonder if we all get programmed from childhood of the good guys always win, the white hats always come in and beat the black hats. All the movies we've grown up on, the Walt Disney ones and such like, there's always a happy ever after. The bad guy gets called in Scooby-Doo. The ghosts that are terrorizing the town that Scooby-Doo and his gang are in always turns out to be some bad, evil human. But he gets caught. So we're programmed from a young age in the books we read that justice will always come through. We have to still believe in that. We can't stop believing in justice. We can't stop believing that there's goodness wins the battle in the end. But we still have to do our part to help that goodness work, that goodness come through. It does my head in when people say, "Oh, it'll be all right, Christ will appear and sort it all out." Well, it's not necessarily so. Christ might be thinking that we're not doing the right thing and not working on ourselves enough to be worthy of coming and saving this planet and us humans. We're here to do the work. But humans are a lazy bunch, aren't we? We just, can't be bothered. Don't want to put that effort in to develop ourselves, to help develop the planet and the rest of the solar system and work with the divine source. But there are still people out there doing good things. Justice does prevail in most things. And also there's the law of karma. Whatever you're doing in this life usually comes back to you in some kind of karmic way. Though sometimes it's not in this life, it comes in the next life. And we're trying to develop ourselves so that we don't get caught up in the reincarnation cycle and come back. We want to go on to bigger and better things. The next development, next stage of our evolution. And I was told by a Buddhist guru many, many, many years ago that karma happens to people in different levels, in different kind of time frames. And he was saying that people that are spiritual, that are working on themselves in whatever path they're doing, normally their karma comes around quite quickly. But those that don't work on themselves or don't do an esoteric path, their karma can come around either later on in life or in a next life. But even if it is in the next life, we want to make sure that we're doing the best we can in this life, ready to prepare ourselves for the next life, so that we have that hopefully good karmic backlog to put us into a more fortunate life in the next one that helps us with our development even more. So what we do, it's like they say, it's, the seeds you sow can be reaped in this life or the next life. But I wanted to carry on reading from this. So this is Hussein talking. Must these unfortunate souls who were formed on that unfortunate planet, us, Earth, really remain eternally unperfected and be endlessly coated into various planetary forms and everlastingly toil and moil on account of the consequences of the properties of that accursed organ Kunda buffer? Because if you remember, Gurdjieff says, even though the Kunda buffer was removed from us, the Kunda buffer that made us see the world upside down and life upside down and topsy-turvy, and made us kind of lose our sight of our consciousness and our conscience, even though that's been removed, it's like, you know, an amputee, when they have their leg removed, it still feels like it's there. We still feel like that Kunda buffer's there. And we have to be aware that it's gone, and we're free human beings to develop ourselves now and to see the world for what it really is. Anyway, so on account of the properties of that accursed organ Kunda buffer, which, owing to the reasons extraneous to them themselves, was attached to the planetary bodies of the first free-centered beings of that ill-fated planet. Where then is that pillar upon which, as it were, our whole megalocosmos rests, and which is called justice? We all want justice. I was watching a YouTube video a few months ago about how people nowadays, because we're all programmed to all these superhero movies that are out there, we all want to have powers to help us, you know, beat the baddies, take on the criminals, take on the dark forces, but we need superpowers to do it. Well, them superpowers will come to us if we develop ourselves. Not necessarily that we'll be able to see with, or take people out with x-rays coming out of our eyes, or that we can, maybe we will be able to fly through the air. I hear stories of Tibetan yogis that can not necessarily fly, but they can walk in such a way that it's as if they're walk for miles and miles and miles, just as if they're hopping along. I think it was in Alexandra David Neal's books that I was reading about that, about how she watched this Tibetan yogi who was unaware she was watching him make his way across the Tibetan plains in minutes, which would take a normal man hours, in the way that he was walking, and he was so developed that he had a new way of traveling. Anyway, going off the subject, we're not going to become superheroes overnight unless, well, I don't know, how many nuclear accidents have there been in this world already? You know, Chernobyl and such like. We still don't have any mutant Ninja Turtles coming to rescue us all. There's no humans that seem to have suddenly developed superhuman powers. Anyway, going off the subject. So, I was saying, where then is that pillar upon which, as it were called, our whole megalocosmos rests, and which is called justice? So the whole universe works on justice. No, this cannot be. Something is wrong here, because during the whole time of my existence, not once has a single doubt ever crept into me as to the existence of objective justice. Objective justice. Gurdjieff talks about objective art, objective ways of thinking, objective knowledge, being objective, objective justice. Justice that is not subjective, not for one person, not subjective as in, you know, I'm going to get my justice and my vengeance. Justice that works across the board and comes from the divine source down through the hierarchies into us. And we do have objective justice. It's coming in through our conscience, but how many people listen to their conscience? And Beelzebub goes on, all I have to do is just to clarify and understand why, and we've all been there. Why is this shit happening? Why can I not develop myself just like that? Why is everything so hard? Blah, blah, blah. You know, we've all been there. And for most people, when they first start thinking about that kind of question, why is the world so unfair? Hopefully they would then start looking into things in a more deeper and spiritual way. But not many do. Many easily go back to sleep or are too busy thinking of it from a subjective point of view, or from watching too many TV shows about the criminals always getting caught by the clever detective and such like. These are not questions I can properly answer. I don't know why, apart from it's all maybe a big test, or it might just be because this world's quite unbalanced and not developing in the way that it should be. And we can help with that by developing ourselves. Anyway, the saying goes on, at any rate, from this present moment, the aim of my existence shall be to understand clearly why the souls arising in these free, let me start that again, and he's talking about us earthlings. At any rate, from this present moment, the aim of my existence shall be to understand clearly why the souls arising in these terrestrial, free-centered beings are in such an unprecedented, terrifying situation. Because it is, isn't it? It is quite terrifying. And he's saying it's unprecedented. We're the only planet on this in the universe that runs like it does. We need to ponder on that and think about that. How has this come to be? And Gurdjieff explains all this in All and Everything, and he will go on a little bit more about that now. Having said this, poor Hussein, full of melancholy, drooped his head and became sadly thoughtful. This is what we need to become, thoughtful, pondering on everything. Beelzebub looked at him with a very strange look. Strange, because in this look, his love for Hussein was very clearly seen. And at the same time, it could be sensed that he was nevertheless very glad that his grandson was experiencing such a depression. And as I was saying earlier, sometimes this kind of depression, this son asking these questions, should put people onto a more thoughtful consideration. I can't speak because what's going on. Considering path of who they are, why they are here, what this planet is, what's their role in it all. It should lead people to these kinds of questions, which is quite difficult for some people to ponder upon. And luckily we have people like Gurdjieff to show us there are ways of understanding all this. This silence continued a fairly long time. At last Beelzebub heaved a deep sigh with, as it were, the whole of his essence, and spoke to his grandson in the following words. So he's talking to us as well. We're the grandsons and granddaughters of Beelzebub or Gurdjieff. Yes, my dear Hussein, certainly there is something not quite right here. But if nothing could be done for the beings of that planet by that being who now already has the reason of the sacred Pod Kul Lad, and is one of the first assistants of our endlessness in the government of the world, namely the very saintly Ashiata Shirmash. If he could do nothing, what then can we expect, we beings with the reason of almost ordinary beings? And Ashiata Shirmash was a character in this book who came to teach people how to live correctly on this world, how to be in tune with themselves, the planet and the universe. But after Ashiata Shirmash left this planet, the first generation continued his work, and then the next generation kind of got a bit diluted, let's say, and over time his work got more and more diluted. We could say the same about Christ and the work he brought. Within that first generation, after the apostles, his work got diluted. Buddha, his words get diluted and all what he brought. Muhammad, see how that's been taken, what he brought. It's as though the masses can't stick with what was originally given to them. There's always someone comes along who thinks they can tweak it to make it a bit, I don't know why they think it's a bit better. Obviously, that's an egotistic thing that they're doing. They think they can change it to make it better. You could even say that about Gurdjieff. Somebody tweaked All and Everything. There is an edition out there that has been tweaked, supposedly to make it easier to read, which is why I always recommend you go for the 1950 edition, read that version of the book, and not the one that I think it came out in the 1990s. Because I think they should have on the cover of the one that's been tweaked, the abridged version or something, so that people realize that it's not the correct one to read. Because Gurdjieff wrote these words in a certain way so that it manifests into your body and starts working inside you. Where if it's being tweaked to become like more of an idiot's guide or something, or an abridged version, he's taking out some of that essence of what Gurdjieff was trying to put across. And then Gurdjieff himself, sorry, that's my phone. Gurdjieff himself said this would probably happen because he's seen it happen with everybody else, with Ashiata Shirmash, with the Christ, with Buddha and such like. Their words are all twisted over time, over generations. And it gets diluted and diluted and diluted till only certain bits of it come through, which is why Ouspensky originally was going to call his book In Search of the Miraculous, Fragments of an Unknown Teaching. But G.R. Mead, who was a theosophist, had already brought out a book with that title because they all understood that all these religions and all these faiths and all these mythologies and cultures, all the ancient wisdom was coming down in fragments. It's been fragmented over time. And then I was going to say about how, right, so what did I just read? Oh, about the sacred Pudkulad, one of the reason of the sacred Pudkulad, the development of one, bringing all three centers together, which I've done lots of shows upon. You can go back through the archives and find all them. If we can develop ourselves to that state of reason, then we can go forth with a better understanding of why all this is happening. And Beelzebub goes on, you remember the very saintly Ashiata Shirmash, then in his deliberations under the title The Terror of the Situation, said, if it is still possible to save the beings of the earth, then time alone can do it. And for those of you that don't know what the terror of the situation is, most humans have an idea, know they have to do something that will help them go forward, but they leave it till tomorrow. And that's the terror of the situation. We should be working in the now, doing it now. And I've done a show on the terror of the situation. You can go through the archive and find that. In fact, I put a lot of the Gurdjieff ones into a little podcast playlist. So that's quite easy to go through all them if you wanted to go through that rather than go through all the video section. There's a section saying on the trans spaceship Karnak, I called it, but that's got all the Gurdjieff talks that I've done on there. So if it is still possible to save the beings of the earth, then time alone can do it. We can now only repeat the same in regard to this terrible property of theirs, of which we have just been speaking, namely their periodic processes of the destruction of each other's existence. War, what is it good for? Absolutely nothing, as we know. I forgot who sang that song. But he's saying that's one of the problems with this planet. We continually take war on each other. And I think this is one of the reasons why we don't get to go out and be with other planets. Other beings on other planets don't want a warlike humanity spreading their way across the universe. And Gurdjieff says in his books, and I've read it in other cosmologies as well, that apparently we're the only warlike one. Though I know people are going to come back with, what about the reptilians? What about the greys? Blah, 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 blah. Yeah, maybe there are other baddies out there as well, but then they are also of a lower vibration and have not developed themselves. So they are also causing negative vibrations through the universe. And hopefully justice will come upon them as well. Beelzebub says, we can only say now that if this property of terrestrial beings is to disappear from that unfortunate planet, Earth, then it will be with time alone, thanks either to the guidance of a certain being with very high reason or to certain exceptional cosmic events. So will that being of a certain high reason appear? I get concerned when people are waiting for someone to come and rescue them. I'm quite concerned that a lot of people still think, like I was saying earlier, Christ will save us all. We need to save ourselves and prepare the way for if a being of higher reason comes along, or if we can develop into that being of higher reason, we're being given them opportunities to develop ourselves. Or it's going to be a cosmic catastrophe. Another comet maybe hitting our planet and causing chaos across the whole world, so that we have to start all over again and afresh. And with that, maybe the way that we should be, humans will find a new understanding of how to develop themselves. As Gurdjieff says, many people come to this work through having been affected by some kind of trauma or a shock to their system. That'd be a shock to the system if our planet has some kind of catastrophic cosmic event. But either way, wouldn't it be great if a learned being was developed enough to lead us all? But if it's someone from this planet, then it's someone that needs to develop themselves. Maybe you. So I wish you all luck with that. Watch out for them flying meteors and comets that might hit this planet, and be prepared for what is to come. And live in the now. Work on yourselves now. Be now. Till next time, be in the moment.